what inspired you to become president of Panhellenic Council?
Like, I didn't like kind of like what I saw as a member of the Greek system, and I was just kind of like, when I was standards in our chapter and I was like exposed to being part of leadership on the chapter level, I really wasn't crazy about that. Like, I didn't really like being part of chapter level leadership. I thought it was like doing a lot of petty stuff, and I didn't really find like I didn't feel like I was doing that much, and I also like didn't feel that great about like being in the position of being the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
And what was appealing about Panhell is that I was working at the administrative level, so like working on the university end with people in the FAFSA office and being a representative for students, so helping Greek students kind of get their voice, but also being a liaison between the two parties, because oftentimes there's a lot of tension between Greek students and the FAFSA office, and I like to think of myself as a pretty good mediator and problem solver, so it seems like the right fit for me.
So why do you think there was so much tension with the FAFSA relationship and Greek students?
I don't know if you were around when all of this happened, but there was a former person in the FAFSA office that really kind of like severed that relationship, and there was a lot of tension between the FAFSA office and the Greek organization,
Mm-hmm.
and the sororities and fraternities kind of felt like they weren't working for us, they were kind of working against us and only looking to get us in trouble.
So what did you do to fix this relationship?
I was an honest president, and I really like created a forum where people could speak their mind and talk about the problem that they were struggling with as chapter president, and try to work through that and just be a resource for them. Chapters were much more open with going to Justina and talking about things, going to Eddie and talking about things. So I really felt proud about that. I also wanted to kind of fix the whole thing with social events, kind of when we had all that sexual assault stuff happening. So having less unregistered events, which we like tried to control for a little bit, but I know that it is what it is.
Yeah.
And then with social money, like we tried to bring IFC into the Panhell meetings and talk through some of that stuff, because I don't believe in paying extra social dues, and I don't think that the fraternity should be the ones to set the prices. So we did some talks at the end of the year about kind of price fixing and things like that, which worked for a little bit, but again, it's hard when you're on your way out to make sure that things are still in place for next semester. I know that all of that kind of fell to the wayside, but
yeah. Why do you think rules have been implemented to restrict social events in the long run? And then in the long run, do you think that they'll last?
Okay. So I think that a lot of rules in general stem from the fact that the university has to protect liability, and the university has an obligation to keep its students safe. So that's number one. When my sister went to Syracuse, there was no yellow shirts over monitors or anything like that. It was just two people at the door for like the first hour of the party. There was no chestnut security coming through twice in one night. There was none of that. It was hard alcohol, unregistered events, whatever. And what happened was there was a spike in hospitalization. And what happens is right away, if it comes from off campus, the Greek system has a check on it, and the hospital will notify them if the people that went to the hospital were Greek affiliated. And what happened was there was a rise in that. So what happened? Obviously, the university puts pressure on the Greek system to become safer, and so that people are not getting sick and people are not being hazed and everything. If you're talking about just social events, then I'll restrict it to that. But so then the FAFSA office implemented all of those new social policies, which happened when I came back my sophomore year, and that's when the yellow shirt started, the wristbands, the no red cups, no hard alcohol, all that stuff. So things got a lot tighter just for mere matters of safety. Then if you go into kind of the stuff where I came in and I tried to, really focus on registered events, being transparent about things, being honest about hospitalization, taking care of things, like really opening up the forum for being open and trying to follow the rules, that was really honestly when the sexual assault stuff came to light. One, because I did a lot of work in domestic violence and sexual assault fields, and two, because we did see a couple of cases throughout these couple of years on campus. And those are the only ones that we know about. There's plenty more out there that we don't know about.
Right.
So the theory is that if chapters start saying to their socials, please only plan registered events, Then you have a somewhat confined setting where people are less likely to go upstairs, less likely to, do drugs in someone's room upstairs, and they can really you're restricting the space for a safer space. The
Yeah.
reason I knew that Tuesday events, Wednesday events would happen, but they weren't going to happen on my watch, so that someone has more likelihood of being sexually assaulted. Because when you don't have a safe space where there's sober people, or there's limited confines on things, where you have checks on security coming through, it's just a fact. There's a higher risk of people being upstairs. There's a higher risk of a girl ending upstairs with five guys in a room. And as much as we like to think that stuff doesn't happen, I witnessed it being panel president. So, yeah, that was really where I came from in the matter of safety. I'm not trying to end anybody's fun, but like for my senior year, like whether I mean, I don't know if you picked up on this or not, like I wasn't at Tuesday events because I wasn't going to tell people you can't have registered events, you can't have unregistered events, and then go to them myself,
Right.
So, like, I was just a believer in, like, kind of, I'm not going to be two-faced. If I'm representing the whole council and I'm speaking to these chapters and want them to be safe, I'm not going to go and do the opposite. So.
Okay, yeah. What was it like making decisions as a panel president and then living by those decisions, not only as the president, but also as a member of a sorority?
So I think that it was definitely the biggest struggle. Like, even my friends would like joke around, like when I would talk about the rules or when people would ask me questions, I would kind of separate myself. It did have an impact on my year, and it was definitely a tough struggle. Removing myself completely from the rush process, removing myself completely from the new member process. Making those choices with social events, and being the one that would have to call. Taylor was president and Hannah was president when I was panel president. Those people are both not only my very good friends, they're in my family, and I was the one that would have to say when we got an email about something, I would have to call Hannah and say, Hannah, like, what you realize the position you're putting me in, So
Right.
it was definitely like it was hard. It wasn't like an easy thing, but again, I think that's also what standards you hold yourself to as an individual, and I think that really depends on the president. I don't expect most presidents to be as dedicated as I was. Like I think that I was. I mean, you would hope that I wasn't the exception, but I really felt like I was obligated to either do the job fully or not do it at all. And I felt like that was just an assumption of sacrifice that in that year as president, I was going to have to put the panel and the community first versus AE5. And that's just a fact,
Right.
So yeah.
So, in retrospect, is there anything you would have done, you wish you had done differently? And do you have any advice for future presidents?
Is there anything I would do differently? Just from kind of like what I've heard and just, I mean, obviously I'm not there and whatever. I wish that there was maybe more of a kind of like, we do a pretty good transition when we transition exec, but maybe just more like safeguards to ensure that what I worked hard for to put in place, that it would stay in place, But I think that just has to do with our campus culture. If the sororities want to be schmucks and pay $800 for a party, then that's on them. I can't change the culture of the community. I can try and educate people and I can try to facilitate conversation, but I can't change the way that people think. If all 12 sororities said we're not paying more than $200 for a party, guess what? The guys would take it because we're the ones that have the control, but no one really wants to follow that. So, like, if there was a way that I could have implemented a policy with that people would actually follow without chapters getting in trouble. Because my whole thing was, why the only thing I want to do is save people money. Like we shouldn't have to pay for these outrageous costs. So like that was one thing, is I was trying to help people, and I think that sometimes people didn't see it as that. So if there was a way to kind of facilitate that certain things would stay in place, whether it was the social dues, whether it was the registered events, trying to make sure that those things would happen. I think that there was still a way to create like a safe and fun environment and not create tension between houses, but I just think that people don't want to put the work in for that,
Yeah.
So one, if I could have made sure that certain things would stay in place. I don't have any regrets. I think that I really held myself to a high standard, and I think that led to like having a amazing relationship with all of the chapter presidents, and I think that it says a lot if a chapter president from another chapter, knowing that I am in another chapter, trusts me with information, and like that was to me that was what meant the most is that I did gain a lot of trust from people, and I would never break that. So I really, I don't really have any regrets because I think that I was an honest president, and I really like created a forum where people could speak their mind and talk about the problem that they were struggling with as chapter president, and try to work through that and just be a resource for them. So no, I mean I thought it was a great experience.